Hi, my name is Benedict. Today I wanted to walk you through Space String, which is a new addition to the Space Case collection. Space String is actually going to be given away as a teaser. I understand that while Space Case is only $5 to buy, some people feel like, oh, is it going to work for me or whatever. I understand that. This was a device that I'd sort of had in mind, but it wasn't until after I did the official release that I sort of thought, yeah, I really want to go ahead and make this toy for myself. And I figured, well, you know, the main thing's done, so I might as well give it away to other people. Not everyone's going to find use for it, but I think I will. And if nothing else, it shows you how I think, what my devices are like, and if they're actually going to work in your situation. So Space String, this video in effect becomes the manual for it. So right now I'm not intending to write a manual for it, so if you want to know how it works, how to get good stuff out of it, then please watch the video. It might make the video slightly longer, but you know, mine are always longer anyway. So Space String, we've got to open up. Space String, it's a quad oscillator polysynth, but as the name suggests, it's primarily aimed at emulating string synthesizers, particularly the feel of a divide down instrument. But as you'll see as we go through this, there are certain advantages or unusual features that I've built in that means you can actually get away with doing some basic emulation of real string sections, which has a charm of its own, I think. So we'll start with the fact that you can choose what oscillators you want. Actually, before I go any further, let's hear what the basic thing sounds like out of the box. Simple but effective. So back to the parameters. We can choose different oscillator types. Obviously with this, it's not really a string synth at all. I could have just tied it to one particular oscillator shape, but I figured, well, I've got the option to give them, it doesn't cost me any more, so why not? The next thing is tuning. Actually, no, we'll step back a second. Sine, saw, ramp was just the backwards saw. A lot of times you wouldn't want it, but if you're using a couple of these, then you may put one to saw and one to the inverse of the saw to get phase cancellations and interesting tones from there. Triangle, pulse. You can get nice stringy sounds using pulse sounds and pulse width modulation, as anyone with a Juno 106 or the like knows. So it's a wonderful option to have. I considered not leaving the noise options in, just cutting them out. Then I thought, well, no, the way this sounds, you've got no control of pitching of noise, but it does sound thicker because you've got the 4 random noise oscillators running at once, which makes them sound really rather thick. So back to saw. Now we've got tuning. We've got 2 pairs of oscillators, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. You can choose how they're panned. Let's just get rid of the second pair, so that's B. Choose how they pan. So these are just panning opposite from each other. Mono out to stereo. The same with oscillator B. You can also, because I've set these to go separately, in my experience you rarely want everything out on the stereo in a mix, in a real mix. When you're soloing a sound, it sounds great to have everything right out there. Let's get my hands back in the mix so There we go. Sometimes it's great, but you end up with a sound right around here, and if you're running several sounds in a mix that are like that, you just can't focus your mix. So it's often good to be able to narrow them down. Also because of the tuning, which I will come back to, you can do things like this. So what we're doing there is having the pair B, which are tuned down 1 octave, and we're keeping them closer to a mono and the higher closer to a stereo. So you can pick and choose how you want to balance things out. But if you use what's become a pretty standard feature of a unison on a synthesizer that develops many voices and widens them out across the stereo field, look at Europa, you'll see even in the picture that it doesn't show, oh, we put both out like that. Not once you've got several oscillators, it puts them all in the middle. So the detune knob here is designed to tune 1 and 2 quite a fair way out, and 3 and 4 halfway out. So the detune is sort of more what you're used to with a unison knob, but the stereo thing gives you control over each half. So you can put them where you want, basically, rather than being stuck with one knob that rules everything at once. Our tuning options are -1 octave, so that's taking the B's down 1 octave. Classic sort of prog rock stuff. Unusual tuning, it's 5 semitones down, which is the equivalent of 7 semitones or a fifth up, only it's the octave underneath. Circles and fourths and fifths and what have you. Rather Middle Eastern. These sorts of extra tunings you may not use that much. Back to unison, but it's kind of amusing that they're there. Again, slightly Middle Eastern, 4 semitones, so that's 1/3 up, so that's like C, playing C and E at the same time. Playing C and G, so that's your 7 semitones or a fifth. Make it prettier. Of course, when you're playing an octave down, you're not always going to want that second oscillator at full volume. So you've got the ability to change the volume of pair B, which means you can run it. Synth. Pop everything back. Now here's where the instrument starts to get more interesting and offers a feature which is not common. Again, no LFOs built on board. All of that is designed to be flown in, which we'll see in a moment. Each of the oscillators has the ability to be detuned independently. So if you want to set them to a particular place, you can. So you could decide, oh, let's have all of our lower oscillator running a little sharp. And these guys detune a little bit. So you've got a lot of ways that you can choose to set this up. That gives you a fair amount of freedom, because remember, this is designed as a character instrument, so it's designed for you to be able to design things the way you want. You can go quick and dirty and simple, and it's going to work nicely, or you can get in and start to play with different things. Next knobs, well, we've already covered the A and B section widths, the B section level. Amplifier ADSR, very much as you expect. You can set it so that I won't pretend that this is necessarily going to be good for plucks or staccatos or whatever. Play around with it. It may be. I spent a few minutes with it, sort of thought I was probably not great for that, but then string synths really never were. What you do have, of course, you've got your main volume as well. What you do have is a velocity control. Now, when you're orchestrating strings, the synthesizer velocity to volume is nowhere near as interesting or useful as you think it is. It's generally more useful to control, to automate the main volume over time. So you might want to assign that to another controller, or merely just draw that inside your sequencer to get your volume swells. So I decided, well, rather than just hardwiring velocity to volume, which I haven't really in any of the Space Case units, with the exception of Strike, we would play around with, and it's up to you how effective this is, we'd play around with being able to assign velocity to the envelope shape, or the times. So obviously a little overkill there. Definitely not the same as a player or a really well implemented sample setup, but this is not meant to duplicate that sort of stuff, merely to give some of that feel. So by controlling how, like, the velocity of particular notes, you control how fast they come in, therefore a perception of how dominant they are. So you might, as you've seen here with left hand, play really lightly. And the right hand, you want the melody to be a little bit more dominant, so play a little bit harder. It may be a feature that you find no real use for. It may be a feature that you find rather cool. Entirely up to you, sort of which way you go with that. But as you can see, velocity the harder you play, will actually make attack, decay, and release shorter. If you don't like it, turn it off, no loss. So, instrument. You'll also notice that there are no filter controls on board. This was pretty common in actual string synths, Logans, Elkas, any of that sort of stuff. They often didn't have much in the way of tone controls. Some did, some didn't. So seeing that there's already a brilliant set of tone controls included in Space Case, or you've got tons of EQs of your own anyway, or filters. doesn't need a lot of EQing or filtering to start to pull out a really rather nice sound. Next thing that was common on the actual divide down string synths was the use of phasers. In this case, I've grabbed Air Raid Audio's Elements, which I think is a rather nice phaser. The default patch is rather horrible, but if you play around with it, you'll find dropping octave, classic prog, as I said before, so it's a nice way of getting a little bit more meat for your phaser to cut into. But then we would commonly use delays. So if we want to run a chorus, I'm not going to get too much into delays, and nor am I going into how we're controlling this, then you can look at particularly the Space Synth 101 video, because that walks you through showing these. But needless to say, I have a pair of LFOs controlling this. So a dry signal, one chorus. If we are thinking the kind of symphonic, then you would actually have two layers of chorusing. So that's really getting you into that sort of territory. Again, this is not meant to be an emulation, so it's not as I say, an Alka or any of those things, but it's going to give you the ability to make sounds that could be Logan's or Selena's or whatever, something along those lines. It's about making your own sound rather than copying someone else's, much as it's very tempting. But when you've done your own sound, then you can say that you really are unique, and well, fashion may be to follow what's exactly the same. Sooner or later there's going to be a massive swing against that, and people are going to start to look for records that do sound unique. Probably better you be there. Imagine that in a mix, and we've got a really nice cool sound, and that's without having much movement. If we open this up, now at the moment I don't have any reverb. We'll pull in some reverb here. Got our trusty something that's going to sound really wonderful and lush in a mix on the synthy side, but hey, that's what I do. We'll turn that reverb off now for now. If you're wanting to hear a sort of combination of chorus, again, definitely workable. Oh, and the sound that you're all looking to hear, if it'll do it. is. So let's turn these fellas off. Turn the filters off. Get rid of our phaser. That's the one. No phaser. Now, my friend cron. Don't worry about trying to get your head around cron. You understand it or you don't. It doesn't really matter either way. I'm merely using this because it's a device that I like, and if you get into CVs, it gives you an immense, mind-boggling amount of control over it. If your mind is boggled, doesn't really matter. What I'm doing is going to show you how I'm working with these. So I've grabbed 4 LFOs, assigned them through mod CV ins 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got another one coming from over here, which we'll think about later. For the moment, kind of ignore it. So we've got our 4 LFOs, which are being flown up to vibratos 1 through 4. We're setting those all to be in the middle, as in perfectly in tune, and assigning the amount of LFO so that it will hit the top and bottom when I go up to maximum amount. Look at them fly. So as you see, these are leaping around, matching this. Now for the moment, I set these up, and I've actually BPM'd them only so that I can keep them in sync with each other, and I've moved the phase relationship of them. So that one's offset by 180 degrees, so when one's up, the other's down. You'll see that here. And they're controlling 1 and 2. And so the B set is being controlled by these two with an offset of 90 degrees, which means it's following not quite the same as you see here. How you control that, sort of really up to you. You could well put these into a combinator and then assign your combinator to control depth. Use whatever LFO devices you want. I'm going to show you another trick if you don't want to use 4 discrete LFOs. I'll show you another trick later. But this is just a way of doing it. You don't have to have them synced at all. So if we turn these off, you don't want them to be the same rate as each other. Very nice cello-y sound. Really nice single high string filmy sound. It's all there if you want to work it. Sit beautifully in a mix. So what we're doing there is, rather than having all of the LFOs going at exactly the same time as each other, in exactly the same phase as each other, which I think we've got to turn this off. Nope, they're random. There's a way to do it, I've forgotten what it is. Because commonly in a synthesizer you have all of the LFOs controlling all of the oscillators at the same time. And if you ever watch a string section playing, same with guitarists, when they're creating vibrato, they're all slightly out of time with each other. There'll be some guy who's who's really gung-ho, drunk a lot of V or something that morning, and he's going real fast. And there's somebody who's a little bit old, a little bit lazy, didn't want to wake up, and their vibrato is a bit slow. So it's that variation of timing and phase in how a string section is creating vibrato that makes it so much thicker. And initially, I started with this. It was just going to be, there was going to be one knob that you could use to rule it all. And then I thought, what if I separate A and B out? And I thought, hang on, if I've gone that far, why don't I try 4 and see what it sounds like? Bloody brilliant was the answer. So if you're using a synthesizer and feeling like, I just don't quite get that thick enough string sound, that's what this fella is designed to do by creating different oscillator ways. Now here's another trick. You see now that I've moved these to unipolar, so all of your vibratos are actually above the center. You might say, well, Bennett, I don't really hear a difference. No, it's fair enough you don't, but you do feel it. What it does is it pulls you can hear it there, it pulls the instrument a little bit sharp. One of the advantages of being a little bit sharp is that it sounds cheerier, and it will cut through a mix just that little bit more. I don't know enough about the mechanics of playing a violin, but it wouldn't surprise me if in reality, when you've got those guys hacking away, that they aren't actually creating vibrato that's more sharp than flat. Synthesizers tend to go both sharp and flat. Not always. Some of them have the option to be unipolar, in which case they go all sharp. But commonly they go both, which this does natively, but you've got the option to make it go all sharp. So you've really got a lot of control how you go about doing things here, and that's a deliberate charm. The instruments I'll give you a little bit of reverb. You might be feeling a little bit tired of hearing the dry sound. So as you see, LFO's moving slowly. Also give you an ability to do the detune or the spread thing. Another way to create a really broad sound. Of course you can so it all just changes how those oscillators interact with each other, which means you get a subtly different sound. And those subtly different sounds, let's say you decided to use 4 of these. You said, okay, in my orchestra, in quotes, I have 4 string sections and they're going to play different lines, or they're going to play cantor, or even they're going to create the chords. Let's say each one of these is going to play one note. and collectively all 4 of them are going to build up your chord, then if each of them is behaving slightly differently, then you're going to end up with a really fat sound, which is like the old Oberheim instrument, the 4-voice that was built out of 4 separate stems in one box. Good luck getting those things in tune and creating voices that actually sound the same as each other, but as a result, those things were enormous. So this is allowing you to control that and taking advantage of the Reason environment. Now, as I said, I was going to show you a different trick. It's one that I found out yesterday and really rather took to. So let's kill off that, get that there. Now we're going to add a pulsar, which you should have. Remember, this other pulsar is just controlling the delay, which we're not running right now, so we can ignore it. We're going to take one LFO, this is a utility which I believe is still free. Oh, let's do this the other way because it's running under my head. Let's go find him. Degree, lay splitter. So this, just so you can see it, we'll take one of these, put it into in. We'll hit the stripe to be on, which means that it's now appearing across everywhere else. We can now take 1, 2, just fold that up so we can see, 3 and 4. So we're pulling the one oscillator, or the one LFO, out of 4 separate channels. You can see it flicking here in all 4. We can create a little bit of delay. I actually like that in BPM. You can put it in BPM if you like. I'm not a massive fan of BPMing everything, as I'm sure I've said before, because it creates a sense of everything being the same. I don't like things being all the same all the time, because I think, as I've said, like with your string sections, it's unnatural. They're all doing this at separate times from each other. That's natural and normal. So we've now got these all wired in. We raise these. So you see they're all going at slightly different times from one another. That's the lazy fella sitting right there in the middle. Let's open this back up. These are using this, which you should already have, your pulsar, and Loth, which I believe is still free. If not, there are various other devices that are not dissimilar, or you could even just create 4 of these. But I kind of like the idea of them being at exactly the same rate by being offset from each other. Just another technical trick. There's no right or wrong here. But here's what I found that I liked. Again, this is going above and below. Let's just pull that back so it's not detuning. It's giving a rather nice semi-real string sound. But if we start looking at other oscillator shapes, I think that's an absolutely winning combination. So what you've got is an LFO shape that goes up and then scoops back down again, up and scoops back down again. That's probably closer to how somebody actually creates vibrato. We as synthesists tend to assume that they create vibrato like in a sine wave or a triangle wave, and they can sound good, but the problem is that they're too even. But from stuff that I've read whilst I was doing the Run for the Sun album and making metal guitars using synthesizers, something I read was that when guys are creating vibrato on their guitars, they're not actually using a sine wave, they're using something where they go in hard and then back off slow, go in hard, back off slow. What does that look like? Go in hard, back off slow. It's not quite the same shape as they were showing, but you hear the sound difference. To me, I think is really, really charming. It's got the brightness of going sharp and the interest of being a less regular shape. If I had Cron open or anything that I give you similar options, I could actually draw my own LFO shape. So I could draw my perfect vibrato shape and then use something like this to do the same trick that I've got here, which is have it play off it in a delayed sort of a way. Of course, it's not coming back because I shut it off. There we go, we're back. And on that collection of notes, I'll leave you with this. I hope you find it interesting. You can download the space string, this wee fella, on the page that you're on at the moment on my website. So that's the Space Case supporting stuff page. That's where I'm keeping all the videos and everything together. If you want to buy the rest of the devices, which includes the things that you're seeing here and other goodies that you see on the main page, then also please scoot across, just $5, and that also gets you an album full of super cool space music made by moi using these devices, except for Space String because it didn't exist at the time. Thank you very much. You have a great day now.